Okay, we're back and we're going to do the first part of our final cut on the skateboard and our model here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a work plane, and then we're going to use that work plane in a separate part to actually create the final sketch or the final cut of the skateboard, because we want to leave this model untouched. We don't want to have, we want to be able to use this when we actually use our assembly file and put our molds and skateboard together. So to do that, we've got to do a couple of steps here, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to walk you guys through how to do that in this video, while also keeping along the idea that we want to keep a skateboard that's really parametric and able to change all of our models, all of our cuts based on what the customer needs. Okay, so we're going to start off here with a work plane, and that work plane offset is going to go from the top of our geometry. Okay, so the top of our origin, and we're going to put it like 12 inches above our skateboard. And the reason we're doing that, we're getting this distance from here to here, is so that as the angle of these kicks change, they won't interfere with the sketch that we're going to create up here. Okay, and then we're going to start a sketch on that work plane, and we're going to just start off with a simple rectangle. And you see how it wants to attach there? I don't want it to be attached. I don't want to be constrained by anything, so I'm just going to make sure nothing is yellow, and I'm going to put my rectangle in there. All right, and then when we start putting constraints in, it will be the exact constraints that we want. We know we're not locked into anything that is going to surprise us later on. Okay, so now we want it to be constrained to the middle of our board. In the middle of our board, and the only way to make sure that everybody is on the same page of this, if you didn't constrain your board to the origin, is by turning on the visibility of that center sketch. And we're going to copy that geometry. So we hit the visibility for our first sketch, and then our use geometry, and we're going to click on that line there, make sure it's going all the way across. And now we can put our dimension going down. And mine does happen to be with the origin, but if yours didn't, then if you just clicked on the origin, it wouldn't be in the right spot. And we're going to put 0. Okay, so now it's constrained to that 0, and we want this to be the correct distance going all the way out. And so what we'll do is we're going to put in a measurement here, and we're going to put in a little evaluation. My mind just totally blanked on the correct one, the correct terminology. But we're going to put in a little equation here, and that's going to give us the correct distance. But first, before we do that, we got to make sure that we're working with the right end of the board. Okay, so let's figure out which end of the board we're working on. And we're going to do that by changing the kicktail angle of one of them. We're going to make it perfectly flat. So we're going to say the angle is 0. Okay, let's see if it'll let us do that. Yep, okay, so this is the kick nose. See how it's 0 up here? So this is the nose. So we are working with the tail. So we need to make sure that when we're putting our dimension in this guy, that we reference the tail length. The other thing that we need to do is you're going to have to add in another variable called tail length final, and we're going to just default that to 5 inches. You can change it later on, 6 inches, whatever you want to make it, but we're going to change that default to 5 inches, and make sure you add the variable above being 5 inches. So you've already added a ton of variables, so I don't want to go over that. I don't want to spend time doing that, but you're going to put in tail length final, and then make sure you just drag it up above. Make sure you drag it up here so that it doesn't, so that the sketch can actually use it. Okay, and then the formula that we're going to use, I've recreated in a Word document so that we can just copy and paste it. But you can see on the screen here that we have this is the formula that we're going to be using. And Onshape's syntax is pretty finicky, so I was playing around with the syntax beforehand to make sure that we had the right one. But the length that we want the length to be driven by what measurements we've already have in there. So we have the board length in there, which goes all the way across the board, so you have to divide that by 2. We have the transition that goes from here to here. And then the final tail length, which is what we're going to be putting in as a measurement itself. Okay, so which we have for 5 inches. So we're going to put that dimension in, and we're just going to copy and paste that dimension, or that formula that we created. So this formula right here. And you do the same thing for the other end, only you're just going to be using the nose length for the other end. Okay, and you'll have to create those variables. I'm not going to do both sides for you. You guys have to do both sides. Okay. All right, so now we put that guy in there. It's going to reference all of our other things. So as we change this, so let's say I change the tail length to 6 inches. Okay, it's you can see that it went a little too long there, so we'd have to change, make some other measurements. So I'm going to change it to 5 inches. Okay, and so now we've got half of our board ready to go. Okay. All right, the next measurements that we're going to use are ones that we've already used, so that we've already created, okay? And this is the final width of the board, okay? So we already have created in a previous video, we've already created the final width here, so that when we change this number, it's going to automatically adjust all the geometry that we've built into the board already. So we could just reference that number going across here to here. So we can say hashtag final width. Okay, so now we've got that number called. It will change as we change the rest of the board. All right, and so now we want to make sure it's centered here. And so the easiest way to make sure this is centered is to actually reference the board if it changed the width of the board. So we have our rough width. So we're going to say hashtag rough width. And we're going to subtract the final width. Okay, and you can see how it pushes it all the way to one side. Well, that's because we didn't account that we wanted it to be spaced on both sides, so we're going to just divide that number. We're going to put brackets around it. I think that works for the syntax here. We're going to divide that by 2. Boom. There it is. Yep. Okay, so now this is centered. As we change the final width of the board, as we change the rough width of the board, as we change any of the length, these numbers are all going to adjust automatically for us. So that's all good news for us at this point. All right, so now what we'll do is we're going to start putting in how we're going to adjust the shape of this board. So we want to put in some curves on the top of the board here, and we're going to use 3-point arcs for that. Okay. Go. I'm going to have that arc going in there. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and close this sketch for a second, because we're going to need to add some variables now. So the way we're going to add variables in this is we want to account for the length of this distance from here to here, and we want to account for the shape of the arc from here to here, and then we also want to account for the radius of that arc. So the way we'll do that is you're going to create a couple of variables, all right? And the first variable, and again we're working with the tail here, the first variable we're going to create is the tail shape. Okay, so you would click on your variable, and then you would hit tail shape, and we're going to make that one 3 inches. And then we've already created the tail final length. So again, if you haven't already, you're going to create the variable, and you're going to create the final tail length. And then the last one that you have not created, which is the tail radius. And that radius is going to be how round is this curve, right? The roundness of this curve. So we've got all our variables created at that point. If you haven't yet, go ahead and pause the video and create them real quick, because you can't do the next parts without these 3 variables. Okay, so now we're going to go back down to our sketch, and we're going to put in our dimensions. And so from here down to this is going to be our tail length final. Okay, and we're going to put that same one in here. All right. And then we're going to put in tail shape. So tail shape is going to be going across this board. So how far do we want that guy going in? So we're going to say hashtag tail shape. Okay. And then as we change those two numbers, they will change automatically, right? It'll adjust our board automatically. And then our last is going to be that radius. So we're going to put our radius in here. And we're going to say we want that tail radius to be 15. And then we'll change that other one as well. So this board looks that's a pretty sharp curve going in there. So maybe we want to change that tail radius so that our foot has a nice wide area to go to. And maybe we want to change that tail radius to something a little bit smaller. Okay, so we can say, let's go 8 inches, and let's see if that gives us a little bit better shape. Yeah, that looks a little more rounded in there. Okay. Okay, so that's the first part of our video. You guys are going to do the same thing going the other way though. Okay, so you've got to create the nose using similar variables. So you're going to have to add the nose shape, the nose length final, the nose radius, and you're going to do the same thing going the other direction as you did with this end, only you're going to be referencing these the new variables that you guys are going to put in there. So you're practicing it on this end with me in the video, and then you're going to put that to work on the other side of that video, and then we'll come back and we'll show you guys how to create that extrusion and the assembly file in another video. Okay, so I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in class, and yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day.